While some may say Lake Geneva, Wisconsin is the Hamptons of the Midwest, I believe that the Hamptons of the Midwest is right here in northern Michigan. And apparently many people agree because there has been an influx in people relocating here. But where are the best areas to live on the water in northern Michigan? Today, we will be looking at some of my favorite areas in northern Michigan to buy a waterfront home, because it's not only about the home itself, but about the lake living lifestyle here in northern Michigan. After living in northern Michigan for 40 years and helping around 600 people either buy or sell a home, just like you, I've narrowed down my top 3 favorite places to buy a waterfront home in northern Michigan. So let's get started, starting from the most expensive and going down to the least expensive. The first top waterfront community in northern Michigan along the shores of Little Traverse Bay is Harbor Springs. Harbor Springs is about a friendly community with great amenities and tremendous views of the bay. Living in Harbor Springs means you will never run out of things to do. The downtown area is super appealing to people of all ages. It features a volunteer-run movie theater playing both new releases and classic movies. There's also a bowling alley with an arcade and laser tag, as well as one of my personal favorite, Pine Hill Farms, which is a farm located just north of Harbor Springs that's fun year-round, specifically in the fall, because they have a lot of cool things to do, like pumpkin bowling, pumpkin smashing, as well as hay rides and a small petting zoo. Of course, in the summer, the town's major attraction is the waterfront. From swimming to seeing the views to even fishing, Harbor Springs is one of the most quintessential resort communities you will ever find. Despite having only around 1,000 year-round locals, Harbor Springs is a very tight-knit community, which will really give you a sense of belonging. Since Harbor Springs is such a small town, one of the concerns I often hear from people moving here are, where am I going to grocery shop? They have the Harbor Springs Market, which is located a couple blocks outside of downtown Harbor Springs, which has all the necessities you need for day-to-day life. There is also the D&W Market, which is about 10 minutes away from downtown Harbor Springs. And if you're familiar with northern Michigan grocery stores, that used to be called Glenn's, and it's what's known as a Spartan franchise grocery store, which means it's a very big grocery store. Also, south of Petoskey, and yet not too far away from Harbor Springs, there is a Michigan favorite, Meijer grocery store. Meijer is personally my favorite big box grocery store. They have great prices, great selection, and are always fully stocked. Now, my all-time favorite grocery store is a little place just outside of Harbor Springs called Petoskey Sands. They have the most high-quality meat, a great wine and beer selection, and some little novelties that you're going to love for any dinner party you're going to be hosting. For anyone moving to Harbor Springs with their families, you're going to love the school options. In fact, the student-to-teacher ratio is 12 students to 1 teacher, which is much lower than both the state and the national average. Another interesting fact about Harbor Springs schools is 97% of the teachers have more than 3 years experience, meaning your students are going to get a great quality education from these teachers. They also have a ton of extracurricular activity like band, performing arts, and of course, all the sports you'd expect at high school. They even have a new video editing class. So now that we've examined what it's like to live in Harbor Springs, we're going to talk about how much it actually costs to buy a home there. Speaking of the general Harbor Springs market, the prices range there from anywhere from $250,000 to $10 million. In terms of how much it costs to live in Harbor Springs, you can buy a house for as little as $250,000, anywhere up to $10 million. But you came here to find out what it costs to buy a home on the water in Harbor Springs. So before we get into that, I do want to say there are a couple of ways to be on the water in Harbor Springs. You can buy a house directly on the water with a dock or a private beach, or both. You can buy a house with a great water view, and you can also buy a house that has shared frontage. Now, how does that work? The way shared frontage works is you have a group of houses that share a common beach area. The benefit of this is you get water access and a lot of the same lifestyle that you would get from living directly on the water for a much lower price. In fact, we just sold a house a little bit north of Harbor Springs with shared water frontage for $750,000. That is much less expensive than buying that same house directly on the water, and you still get access to a great private beach. Something else important to keep in mind about buying a house in Harbor Springs on the water is a lot of people consider Harbor Springs a luxury area because there are a few billionaires and even a couple of celebrities who own houses there. Now, I'm often asked what makes Harbor Springs so expensive, and my response to that is simple. The great water views, the high quality resort lifestyle, and even great schools are some of the components that have continually made Harbor Springs one of the most desirable places in all of northern Michigan and the entire Midwest to live. It is simply hard to beat the quality of life that you'll experience living in Harbor Springs. By the way, I have a ton of new videos coming out about Harbor Springs. If you'd like to learn more about the pros and cons of living in Harbor Springs or anywhere else in northern Michigan, please subscribe to my channel. We release a new video every single week. So the second best waterfront area that is slightly less expensive than Harbor Springs is just around the bay. Petoskey is considered one of the best small towns in the entire Midwest, and I truly believe the stunning water views play a part in that. Petoskey is conveniently located closer to bigger cities. It is a 4-hour drive to Detroit and a 5.5-hour drive to Chicago. Now, I personally don't like long car rides, so one of my favorite things to do is drive an hour and a half to Traverse City, get on a plane, and in 37 minutes, you have arrived in Chicago. And the interesting fact is you lose an hour, so your takeoff time is usually 37 minutes different than your arrival time, which means you don't really lose any time. Now, Petoskey is truly a gem. It is located on the shores of Little Traverse Bay and smack dab between two of the best ski hills in northern Michigan, Boyne Highlands to the north and Boyne Mountain Resort to the south. Overall, if you like being outdoors, Petoskey is going to be right up your alley. One of my favorite things to do is ride my road bike on the Little Traverse Wheelway. It spans all the way from Charlevoix to Harbor Springs, and it's a little over 40 miles of paved biking. And in the winter, we have the Winter Sports Park, which has ice skating and sledding. The natural beauty in Petoskey is hard to contend with and is a nice break from the busy city life, which is why many people vacation right here in Petoskey. Also, compared to Harbor Springs, Petoskey is a bit bigger with 6,000 year-round locals. So that's good if you want to live somewhere with a little bit more action. Another thing I love about Petoskey is you are surrounded by people who like to live a healthy lifestyle. There are many gyms in this area, including my personal favorite, CrossFit of Petoskey. Also, if gyms aren't your scene, you will always see people jogging, riding their bikes, and even rollerblading on the sidewalk. Fortunately, one of the things that makes living a healthy lifestyle in Petoskey a little harder are the great restaurant options. If you're a foodie, you're going to love Petoskey. In fact, many people don't realize just how many great restaurants are here. From Chandler's to Pour to my personal favorite, the Palette Bistro, Petoskey's dining scene is simply one of the best in northern Michigan. In fact, 3 of my favorite dishes in all of Petoskey are located at the Palette Bistro, by the Forest Floor Soup, Seafood Paella, or Margarita Pizza. Also, one of my hidden favorite restaurants in Petoskey is located in the Inn of Bay Harbor, and it's a small restaurant called Vintage, which I personally love. Something that also stands out to me about Petoskey is just how safe it is here. In fact, the crime rate in Petoskey is 88% lower than the national average. To top it all off, we have top-notch healthcare with McLaren Northern Michigan Hospital. Now, we talked about the schools in Harbor Springs. What about the schools in Petoskey? Now, they do have a higher teacher-to-student ratio, but Petoskey still has some great options. While Petoskey obviously has great public schools, my son has attended St. Francis Xavier since he started school and absolutely loves it, and I think it's one of the best schools you could possibly go to. Want to see one of the coolest things about Petoskey? Just walk down Mitchell Street and see all of the beautiful Victorian homes. Now, while those homes can range anywhere from $1 million to $2 million, there are still some affordable options just a couple blocks away and still downtown Petoskey. Now, one thing about buying a home in Petoskey on the water is a lot of those homes are going to be located within the resort community of Bay Harbor. If you're not familiar with Bay Harbor, it is a very high-end resort community that was developed about 30 years ago, and I've done a video on this that I'll link right here. We only have one waterfront community left to talk about, and if you can guess what it is, please leave a comment below telling me. If you guessed Charlevoix, you'd be absolutely right. Believe it or not, Charlevoix is one of the most affordable places to buy a waterfront home in this area. A small town charm with tons of outdoor activities. One thing I personally love about Charlevoix is it feels like it's a mix between Petoskey and Harbor Springs. It has the small community feel with expensive houses like Harbor Springs, still a lot to do like Petoskey. Also, it's located on 2 bodies of water. We have Lake Charlevoix and Round Lake, and also Lake Michigan. One thing that I personally think is super cool about Lake Charlevoix is the ability to have a boat in your backyard on a dock and access a great inland lake, or go on a more extensive trip and travel to Traverse City, Chicago, or Mackinac Island. That is something that is very rare and what really draws people to Lake Charlevoix. I get asked, what size boat can you handle on Lake Charlevoix? I've seen everything from 20-foot boats up to 100-foot boats, making Lake Charlevoix one of the boaters' paradises of northern Michigan. Another great thing about living in Charlevoix is just how many events it has. Fortunately, every year when the Venetian Festival hits, it sort of signals the end of summer, because I feel like once we get past the Venetian Festival, the summer goes very quickly. But before you know it, my second favorite event in Charlevoix happens every October, which is Apple Fest. They have everything apples related, every type of way to eat an apple you could possibly think of, as well as a petting zoo and some rides for the kids. Architecture is also something to talk about in Charlevoix. The mushroom houses designed by Earl Young really add to the overall character of Charlevoix and make it very, very unique. Also, Charlevoix only has about 2,300 year-round residents, making it a very tight-knit community. Downtown Charlevoix is pretty awesome. One thing that's really interesting about it is the downtown Main Street is also the only way to get through Charlevoix. There's tons of shops and restaurants, and also you get a tremendous view of the water while walking on the sidewalk downtown. Also, Charlevoix is home to a really popular wedding venue called Castle Farms. It's exactly how it sounds. It's a castle that looks like it's on a farm just outside of downtown Charlevoix and hosts tons of weddings every year. Now, if you're asking what it costs to buy a house on the water in Charlevoix, there are a couple things you need to take into consideration. Lake Charlevoix and Lake Michigan have two very different values. You can find still affordable houses on Lake Michigan. Now, you're not going to get a dock in your backyard, but you will still get a great beach and tremendous views. Lake Charlevoix has gotten a little bit more expensive, with the entry level on that lake being anywhere from $2 to $3 million. As I mentioned before, Lake Charlevoix also has some great shared frontage options, which should be able to give you access to the lake and even sometimes a dock for much less money. In fact, I just showed a house to a friend of mine with shared frontage that you could drive to with your golf cart that was right around $600,000, which is much less than it typically costs to be on Lake Charlevoix. Buying a waterfront home can be one of the best decisions you ever make. It's still important to keep a couple of things in mind. So here are my top 3 tips when you're considering buying a waterfront home. Obviously, the property taxes are going to be higher because property taxes are based on the value of a home, meaning the more expensive the home, the higher the property taxes. And if you figure that homes on the water typically cost much more than homes off the water, of course the taxes are going to be a little bit higher. But there's also a couple of other things you might not be thinking of. Due to the fact that the houses have a lot more wind, water, and snow, you might need to budget extra for some maintenance items. So most people hire a company to put their dock in and take their dock out every year. And what about the water toys? You're also probably going to want a boat, jet skis, or any other type of toy to use on the water. Also want to make sure you inspect the well and septic system, because unfortunately on the lake, if one of those fails, it can be a really big pain to replace them, and sometimes not even possible. I'm not saying that to scare you, just to encourage you to make sure you check those systems out to see exactly what you're getting yourself into. Now, I've never personally had a problem, but I've heard horror stories about septics or well failing on the lake and having to talk to the neighbors or figure out an alternative way to put a new septic in. So number 3, keep safety in mind. If you're buying a waterfront home in northern Michigan, you're going to have friends and family visit, and oftentimes those come with little kids. Meaning, make sure there is no way for somebody to escape your house into the water for a tragedy to happen. Again, this is something that rarely happens, but I want to mention it because safety is a big issue. So make sure there's either a fence or some way to keep people you don't want in the water out of the water. So speaking of safety, it's not super common in northern Michigan, but there are some areas that require flood insurance. So that should definitely be a question you ask your real estate agent before purchasing a house, is if you have to buy flood insurance. I have personally helped about 600 families either buy or sell a house in northern Michigan. And if you are interested in learning more about what it's actually like to buy a waterfront home in northern Michigan, I would love to help you. Feel free to reach out to me directly at 231-487-6141 or fill out the contact form below in the comments. If you're still curious out of Petoskey, Harbor Springs, and Charlevoix, which one is best for you, watch the next video where I'll go more in depth on each of those to help you make a better decision. Make sure you watch it by clicking right here.